this is Bart from Ragecraft. In this video I will be showing you how I painted non-metallic metal, the armor of our new model, which is Witch King II. So in this video you will see how I will be distributing the light on the main shoulder pad, which is probably one of the key focus areas when you look at the miniature. And then we will also move to the other parts of the armor, like leg. What is also very interesting about this model, there are many pretty smooth shoulder pads elements here that you can easily play with the lights effects. But what I decided to do here is just to have the biggest concentration of the light at the top of the miniature, and then having a little bit of less light in the lower parts of the miniature. At the top and at the main shoulder pad that I will be painting for you in this video, I will be using the full palette of colors that you see here. So from the darkest ones like walnut brown from Reaper to the top spotlights or edges lights of linen white from the Reaper miniature. But in fact the main reflection of the light, as you can see in the video right now or on the images on our Instagram, you can see that it's a little bit of greenish type of reflection, and this greenish reflection was created thanks to mix of these two paints, which is Abyssal Blue from Scale and also Dead Flesh from Vallejo Air. So as you can see, what I did here with this miniature, the main light is going from that side, so this will be the highest reflection of the light, and in order to build the contrast, I'm trying to use the most darkest areas somewhere in those elements, like in the middle of the shoulder pad. Then of course there are some additional effects that I'm putting and I'm doing at the very end, which is like some elements of rusts, but this is not something that I will be showing you in this video. But let's focus on the main color, which is again, as I said, Abyssal Blue, which is Abyssal Blue from Scale and Dead Flesh from Vallejo. So that's pretty much everything for the introduction. You'll also see the images later of some of the descriptions, which colors I'm using here, and in which area of the painting process you can use which color. So this you can see a little bit maybe later. Okay, so let me start with the miniature that is unpainted at the moment. So even here you can see there is no pre-shade here, it's just the black base coat that I applied with the airbrush. As you can see here, you can easily see how the light, which is pretty much zenithal, is reflecting the biggest concentration of light. So it's somewhere here, then it's here, and then on those elements. So basically that's something that you can, in order to help yourself, you can just take a photo of with your smartphone, and then you can just follow that logic during the process of painting. Okay, so now I will switch to preparing my wet palette. Just give me 1 second. So at the beginning, what I will do, I will try to make a sketch of the main light, and then also sketch the darkest places of this shoulder pad element. For the sketch, I will be using the mix of Abyssal Blue with some Dead Flesh from Vallejo, just to make it more visible. And basically, as I told you, that's the main color that is creating this reflection of a little bit greenish type of armor. So when I was approaching this miniature, I didn't want to have a typical classic grayish type of non-metallic metal, but a little bit with some reflection of some other color. So my style of painting is typically I'm using a lot of diluted paints, so like almost for glazes, but for the sketch I will be trying to have not very much diluted paint. So as I told you, the main light is going something like that, so it will be somewhere here, to just take out a little bit of paint. Then it's somewhere here, and it's there, and it's around that element. So that's just the sketch. So I'm not at this moment looking so much on the quality of that, because I will be then making transitions a little bit later. Okay. The paint is still a little bit wet, so I can try to make it even stronger. Okay, so that's a quick sketch that you can see here. And then I will try to make a contrast, because that's probably the most important element when you paint non-metallic, using non-metallic technique. So there should be pretty strong contrast. So for the contrast, I will be using mostly coal black from Reaper, and that's not a black color, it's more like a very, very dark navy type of blue. So I think it's much better. I can mix a little bit with walnut brown, so if you have other paints, just use very dark brown mixed with super dark navy color. And those elements of the darkest contrast on the shoulder part will be somewhere, let me just look in the camera, it will be somewhere here, then it will be built around that area. So I'm painting right now the darkest element of the shoulder pad in order to build the contrast of the reflections of the metal. So as I said, it will be here, then at that element it's here. And when you are using this coal black color that I'm having here, or very dark navy, you can see that it starts to have some other reflection of the color than the classical black, and it makes, I think, the miniature and the painting a little bit more interesting, or the final outcome will be more interesting. It will be also somewhere here. And because I'm painting in front of the camera, trust me, I'm not typically painting in that way, with the hand stretched in not natural way, and that's a different thing. Alright, I will just apply another layer of this one. Okay, so that's the sketch. I think what is also important about painting this shoulder pad, what you can see maybe on the main miniature, which I will show you in a minute. Let me just try to find the correct focus of the miniature. If you look carefully, you can see that there are very small lines here, or on the axe, because I was trying to paint the effect of the light in that way, that I'm using a very sharp brush and I'm pulling the paint with very, very small lines next to each other, and this creates the effect of like a steel. So just to show you how it can look like, it's basically something like, I'm just taking this color, you will be trying to achieve something like that. And then I'm trying to build the element of light here, but I'm leaving those lines here on the previous element of the color, or the previous color. So when I have here different color, you will see very, very sharp lines, and this creates kind of reflection of the steel. But here we are trying to build the biggest element of light spot. Okay. So, and this is the technique that I will be using all the time when painting this miniature on the armor or on the axe, so the lines next to each other. Alright, so that's from the technique. That's the sketch that we have right now. I'm just trying to find the focus. Alright, so that's the sketch. For this I was using, again, mix of abyssal blue with that flesh from Vallejo, but at the end I will be making the smooth transitions. Alright, so let's start now with painting the overall shoulder pad. So I will be now using for a moment walnut brown in the darkest places that you typically don't see, but this also helps to create the contrast when the shoulder pad will be finished. So I will be applying this on those elements that are between different layers of the shoulder pad. So it will be here, and it's a little bit of brown, so you will see that a little bit later. I'm basically trying to create the division between different layers, again, to have higher contrast. If you don't want to do it, you can skip that step and just leave it with the base coat. It's also fine. But if you just want to master this, I think it's better just to have some other color there. You can also put different color to build some atmosphere, like, you know, green and very dark green, but it's kind of optional. Okay, so I'm just checking the shoulder pad. I think I'm also missing one element of light, which should be also here. So I will just apply it like that. And there will be also some light going here. And a little bit of here. So you see it goes from the dark to the very light, again dark, and again there is a light here. Okay, so that's the sketch of the light. Okay, now I will try to use the abyssal blue color, just this color, to start building the smooth transitions. And what I will be doing is I will try to use this paint, this abyssal blue color, not in the light, but in between the light and the darkest place. So it's like a kind of mid-tone, and I'm trying not to use it too much on the main light. It can go a little bit, but try to keep it. So try to keep the sketch, and pull this color in the direction of the dark element. So as you can see, I'm just starting a little bit at the beginning. The paint is diluted, so there should be some transition, like kind of glaze. And I will also do this from that side, again pulling the paint in the direction of the dark. Now I will use a little bit of petroleum gray from scale, which I can also put a little bit in the dark parts of the shoulder pad, which will be somewhere here. This also will build some reflection. Okay. What is also interesting, I'm using for this rather big size of the brush. It's size 2, but it's very sharp, and it keeps the paint very well, so I have a control of the paint, at least I should have. So I will now try to, paint those transitions using this technique of lines, very thin lines next to each other. So that's how I'm gonna do it. So I will start, so I'm using here the mix of Abyssal Blue and the Dead Flesh. Okay, thank you. And I'm going into the direction of the dark element using the lines. So again, I'm trying not to kill the sketch, just to keep the light. I think I have too much diluted paint, I need to mix a little bit. Okay, so once again, okay. Now I will try to use a little bit more Dead Flesh, and we'll try to work on more on the top light, on the main light. So the ideal direction of the brush would be to pull it from the dark or the mid-tone, so from the previous layer to the one where you see the biggest element of the light. So I should be painting in that direction. So in this way, paint should stay on the light and still should give me the elements of those, the effect of those lights, of those lines. So that's the direction. Of course, if I was painting without the camera, I would just play a little bit differently with the miniature, because typically I pull the brush into the direction of my chest. Here I'm doing the opposite, which is a little bit more difficult, but that's a small sacrifice to make this video. And now I'm doing this in that way again, from the other side. Let me check in the camera if the miniature is presented well. Okay. So you see I will be pulling from, starting from that side, going down. Okay. Okay, and something similar I need to do here. I think because of that, this is the steel and the big shoulder pad. It's totally fine if there will be some nice brush strokes of the lines of the reflection of the steel. So that's also cool about this model. Okay. Now I will come back for a moment to step before, which is fixing this part. So I will apply here a little bit more abyssal blue, and I will try not to kill the light that was previously applied. So I will be pulling the brush into the direction of the chest of this miniature. So I'm just applying it here. Now I can do a little bit of wet blending because the paint is still wet. So now I will add a little bit of more dead flesh, and we'll try to fix this that I was painting in here. So I will try to pull into the direction of light, using again the lines. Okay. Now if we want to build even bigger light, I can just use the dead flesh and do some dots somewhere here, so in the center of the light. Let me just make sure I have proper consistency of the paint on the brush. Okay, I think it's okay. So I will be doing the dots or the super small lines in the very center of the light. So that's only that flesh color, which I will be applying only here. It's also in a little bit of sketch form. Checking if you see this on the camera. You see that I have too much paint on the brush. So now this face shows you that the key light is just in a very small area of the previous layers. So don't put this everywhere on what you were painting before. And just try to make a little bit of focus and narrow the area of the paint. So it still looks a little bit like sketch, but I can work on the transition in a minute. And again, that's the light, that flash here and here. And now if I want to make a smooth transition, I can just do the glaze of the previous color. So combination of dead flesh with abyssal blue. So now I'll be using this mix, and I can apply even on exactly on the same element that I was painting only with dead flesh, and the dead flesh is still strong color, so it will be visible even if I do some glaze. I'm trying to do this glaze in a very controlled way, so I'm not just painting with the whole top of the brush. I'm just gradually in the control way applying the mix of dead flesh and abyssal blue, but still you can see that the dead flesh is somehow reflecting from the below layer. Okay. So now basically I would say that that's the key full sketch, and it's now just playing with the transitions and many lines to make it smooth. So if we compare for a moment with this miniature, you can see that, okay, that's something that I will be trying to achieve. So I will be now doing a lot of glazes with the combination of abyssal blue and the darker colors like coal black in the shades, or I will be using dead flesh here to make it more shiny. And that's just about making sure that the paint is diluted very well. It should have the consistency of milk, as many painters are using this term. I'm also using this term. And then at some moment it will be almost done. So it's just, and you will see with every step that it will be going to be more smooth, and eventually it will come. So I need a little bit now of more time. It's probably like 17 hours to make it finished, but no, I will try to make it fast. I will just use a little bit smaller brush here to have better control. Okay, so I will try now to work a little bit more on the shades area. So it will be abyssal blue with petroleum gray, which is interesting color, this petroleum, because it's like a little bit like a violet. So it's not classical gray, but it has a very nice also matte type of reflection, or not too much reflection. So I'll be just working on these areas, so the dark ones, trying to make the smooth transition. And I'm trying to do the lines. I think it's also fine if some of the lines will be visible on the lighter areas, because it will just create some cool reflections. Okay, I will now try. I'm using now just abyssal blue, and I'm somewhere in the between the dark color and the light, doing the many lines next to each other. Now I will try to have a little bit more dead flesh and play closer to the light, doing the lines into the direction of light. I'm trying not to hide this on the camera. So if you want to help yourself with very thin and sharp lines, just try to have a very good brush. Typically it's the only moment at the very beginning when you have the brush, so you can invest in one or two brushes. I don't want to make special advertisement here, but I have recently switched to DaVinci because I really believe they are very sharp, and you can even use the bigger sizes. And so you will have more paint on the brush, but it's really cool, and they are very sharp. I think they are, at the moment at least, the sharpest ones if I compare to other that I was using. Okay, so that's, you can see that there's a little bit more transition, smooth transition right now. But again, because it's steel, it doesn't have to be very smooth. It can have some scratches and visible lines, and I think it will look still very cool. So it depends if you prefer to have more brush strokes visible or less. Then you can just play a little bit more with, you know, glazes and smooth transition. So this is what I will try to fix now. It's maybe this element. And those ones, because they're a little bit neglected at this stage. So when we were creating this model, we were trying to have a lot of smooth areas. So that's why we have a lot of, you know, shoulder pads, or basically the heavy armor, classical steel, and there's like a big axe, because in this way, I think also as a painter, you have more possibility to play with the colors. I think we lost for a moment the focus. Okay, now it's back. All right, so let me just try to fix. So I'm using now again combination of abyssal blue and dead flesh. These are the main colors, to be honest, and that's a kind of secret sauce of that color. You mix kind of blue color like abyssal, which is not a typical blue one. It's a little bit of, I would say, violet and gray maybe, and then you take kind of yellowish, which is more close to that type of color, not a very vivid yellow. I'm trying to see if you see it. I also think that there should be tutorials how to paint in front of the camera and how to keep the brush, because I think that's the technique that you have to learn. Okay, and I will now use a little bit more of dead flesh in those areas. So what I like about this model, because it's a more like an undead warrior, the armor can be, you know, full of scratches, rusts, so it doesn't have to be perfect. So to be honest, if I would like to, I can leave it like that, like now, and it will be still fine. Then I can just add a little bit of rust here and there, and I think it will be okay. So I think you can paint this model pretty fast if you want, or this type of models like undead ones, pretty fast with still cool effect. What is also very important, and I can show you this quickly now, the key element of non-metallic is to build a high contrast. So if you want to have this high contrast, I will use now a little bit of bone white with linen white, and this linen white should be used only in the elements like some spot lights or dots of lights, like key reflections, or on the edges, because they will build a very high contrast, but there shouldn't be applied everywhere, just at the top of the miniature. Maybe not so much here, but more here. So if I just do the edge light, like here, very simple, you can see that suddenly the shoulder pad will be more gradual and more visible, that it has different layers. I can't use the brush in a different way, but you know, it's very simple, because you do just something like that, or you can do it somewhere here, or you can do it also, let me just try to find focus again, or you can do it also here. So you just touch the edge, and that's it basically. That's kind of, and this basically, if I will fix it also on this layer, on this part of the shoulder pad, you will see that there each element is kind of divided, and that's cool part of, you know, this type of armor, because it doesn't cost you a lot of time, but you know, the effect, the final result can be pretty spectacular with very simple techniques like highlighting on the edges. So I will try to do it here now. Of course, the highlight on the edge can be gradual. So for example, the white one, the linen white that I'm using here, should be only, for example, on that part and nowhere else. And on the legs you can use different, just a dead flesh, and it will be not so shiny at the in these areas. So this is also what I was doing here, just to try to show you quickly. So basically here I'm using a little bit more of white type of colors, but here I'm using only for edging just a dead flesh. So it's basically different type of white, so it's not so white like it should be here. And that's something that I was taught by great painters like Krzysztof Kowalczyk. Small advertisement here, and big respect to this painter, because it's very important not that, you know, all the miniature then will be in a shiny way everywhere, but it will be gradual, and in this way you can build the focus that it should be more on the top and the head, not so much on the legs. Unless you want to show the focus on the legs, that's a different story, but this is how it could look like. Okay, I will try to still play a little bit with the transitions on the shoulder part to make it more finished. Let me just make a mix again. So now I'm coming again to the key light on that area. So the paint is pretty much diluted. I'm still using the lines, pulling them into the direction of key light, which was somewhere here. Okay, and then also in that direction. And I think it's also fine if some lines will be visible as the brush stroke. Let me just try to show it. Maybe something like that. Okay, now I will try to make a little bit of more light using bone white and the dead flesh, just on those two areas, because they are very much in the top of the miniature, so there should be the biggest concentration of the light. So I'll try to do a little bit of dots and some very small lines next to each other. And somewhere here. And if there is again too much light, I can easily use the combination of dead flesh and abyssal blue to hide this with some glazes, and it will be also fine. Alright. And I think for the moment it can be more or less enough, just to show you the overall technique is now just about making more transitions. You can play with more glazes, so by glazes I mean just applying a lot of diluted paint of abyssal somewhere here. So if you want to have a little bit more visible blue type of reflection, you just try to put this blue, abyssal blue, closer to the light, but again using the pulling and doing the lines in the direction of the dark element, so something like that, and it will be hiding a little bit the light that you have on the previous areas. And in this way there will be just more blue type of reflection of the armor. And that's basically, you can do it basically for eternity. If you want to build an even higher contrast, you can just use the coal black, or as I told you, this very very dark navy color, and try to build this contrast in those elements like here, so the ones that are in the shades, and just try to do some small points or dots or lines next to each other in those areas, and in this way the contrast with this white or dead flesh type of shiny light will be even stronger. And again, you can just smooth it with just many lines and so on and so forth. So I think that would be pretty much in a nutshell how you can do it with this miniature and these colors. Okay, thanks guys.